The text came in at 6:47 in the morning. I was standing at the kitchen counter in my pajamas, waiting for the coffee to finish, and my phone lit up on the counter. I picked it up without my glasses, had to hold it out at arm's length just to read it. Dad, the mortgage is due Friday. Can we talk? I set the phone face down on the counter. I stood there and listened to the coffee drip. 2 months earlier, my son Kyle had gotten married in a vineyard outside Charlottesville, Virginia. 63 guests. A live band, a caterer from Richmond that I know for a fact cost more than my first car. I know all of this because Kyle's mother told me, in a text, 3 days after it happened. I wasn't there. I want to be clear about something before I go any further. I'm not a difficult man. I'm not the kind of father who shows up drunk or starts arguments at the dinner table or embarrasses people. I'm a retired civil engineer from Roanoke. I coach youth baseball on Saturday mornings. I drive a 2019 Ford F-150 that I keep very clean. I am, by any reasonable measure, a completely unremarkable 64-year-old man, and my son got married without me. My name is Gerald Simmons, and the story of how I went from that kitchen counter to the other side of the most important phone call of my life, that's what I'm here to tell you. Kyle was 29 when he met Brianna. She was working in marketing at a tech company in Northern Virginia, and the first time he brought her home, she shook my hand with both of hers and said she'd heard so much about me. She seemed warm. She seemed genuine. I liked her. What I didn't notice, and I've gone over this 100 times since, was that she spent the entire dinner asking questions about the house. Not about me, about the house. How long had I owned it? Was it paid off? Had I thought about downsizing now that I was retired? All wrapped up in smiles and perfectly reasonable conversation, I thought she was just making talk. That was my first mistake. The house on Meadow Glen Drive is a 4-bedroom colonial I bought in 1987 for $94,000. I finished the mortgage in 2011. It sits on about 3/4 of an acre, backs up to a creek, and according to the county assessor's office, it is currently worth $387,000. Kyle grew up in that house. He knows every inch of it. About 8 months after he and Brianna got engaged, Kyle came to me with what he called an investment opportunity. He and Brianna wanted to buy a townhouse in Leesburg. Good area, good schools, good long-term value. The problem was the down payment. They were $40,000 short. He asked if I would co-sign a loan. I said no, not because I didn't want to help, but because I'd co-signed something for my brother-in-law in 2003, and I swore I'd never do it again. What I offered instead was to write them a check, a gift. $40,000, no strings, no expectation of repayment. Kyle hugged me in the driveway when I handed him the envelope. Brianna sent me a very nice card. I want to say I saw something in that moment that should have warned me. I didn't. The wedding invitation never came. I'm going to say that again because I want you to really hear it. The invitation never came. Not a phone call, not a text, not a conversation over dinner where Kyle sat across from me and told me, to my face, that he didn't want me there. What I got was a voicemail, 43 seconds. Kyle's voice, very measured, very rehearsed, explaining that he and Brianna had decided to keep the wedding intimate and that they hoped I would understand. He said he loved me. He said he'd call next week. He did not call next week. I sat in the living room of the house he grew up in, and I listened to that voicemail 3 times. The third time, I noticed the faint sound of Brianna's voice in the background. Not words, just the sound of her there, just off to the side of where Kyle was standing when he called. I've thought about that sound a lot. I didn't go to pieces. I'm not going to tell you I fell apart, because I didn't. What I did was go into the kitchen, pour myself 2 fingers of Knob Creek, and call my oldest friend, a man named Dennis, who I've known since college. Dennis listened to everything I said without interrupting, which is a rarer quality in a person than people realize. When I finished, he said, "Did you change your will yet?" I told him I hadn't thought about it. He said, "Jersair, think about it." I want to say I acted on that immediately. I didn't. The 2 months between the voicemail and that morning text were the strangest of my life. Not dramatic, just quiet in a way that felt wrong. No contact from Kyle. One text from Brianna, asking if I had a good Thanksgiving, which I did not respond to. A Christmas card signed from both of them with no handwritten note. I went back to coaching baseball. I had dinner with Dennis twice a month. I raked leaves. I lived my life. But I also did something I'd never done before. I started reading. Not novels, legal documents. The deed to my house, my will, which I'd written in 2009 and barely looked at since. A document I found in a fireproof box in my closet that I'd honestly forgotten about. A handwritten letter of intent I'd drafted when Kyle graduated college, describing my general wishes for the property on Meadow Glen Drive. That letter changed everything. Not because of what it said, because of what it didn't say. There was a line in it, and I'm paraphrasing, where I'd written something to the effect that the house would pass to Kyle, provided he maintained a relationship of good faith with the family. I'd written it when he was 22, and I was feeling sentimental, and I had never, not once in 7 years, thought about it again. I called an estate attorney in Roanoke named Patrice Holloway. Her office is on Campbell Avenue, 2nd floor, above a dry cleaner. I sat across from her on a Tuesday afternoon with that letter and my original will, and I told her everything. She read quietly for about 4 minutes. Then she set the papers down and folded her hands. She said, "Mr. Simmons, do you want to protect the asset, or do you want to make a point?" I thought about that for a moment. I said, "I want to do this correctly." She nodded. Then we start today. What Patrice did over the next 6 weeks was not dramatic. It was paperwork, a revised will, a trust structure for the property that removed automatic inheritance and replaced it with specific conditions, documented relationship, no outstanding financial disputes, a waiting period. She also sent a certified letter to Kyle's address in Leesburg informing him, as a courtesy, that changes had been made to my estate documents. The letter arrived on a Wednesday. His text arrived the following Monday morning. "Dad, the mortgage is due Friday. Can we talk?" I picked the phone up off the counter. I thought about Brianna's voice in the background of that voicemail. I thought about the wedding I saw in photographs on a cousin's Facebook page. I thought about the envelope I handed Kyle in the driveway and the way he'd hugged me. I typed back, "Sure, come by the house." He came that Thursday. He sat at the kitchen table where he'd eaten breakfast for 18 years. Brianna wasn't with him. He looked tired in a way I recognized, the specific exhaustion of someone who has rehearsed a conversation and knows it isn't going to go the way they planned. He started to explain about the mortgage, about a shortfall, about temporary cash flow. I let him finish. Then I slid a copy of the trust document across the table. I didn't explain it. I didn't narrate it. I just watched him read. He looked up once, somewhere around the 3rd page. I was looking out the window at the backyard. There was a cardinal on the fence, just sitting there. Kyle closed the document. He didn't say anything for a long time. Finally he said, "Dad, I'm sorry." And I believed him. Not completely, and not all at once, but I believed that somewhere inside that there was something true. I said, "I know you are." I didn't say anything else. There wasn't anything else to say. He drove back to Leesburg. I washed the 2 coffee cups. I put them back in the cabinet. The house on Meadow Glen Drive is still mine. For now, that's enough.